Hey everyone, welcome back. Before we start the lesson, you can see that I have some exercises for you. And on the right side of your screen, there are some sentences with some words that are missing. So if you think you know the words, please write them in the comment section. Here's a hint, they're all phrasal verbs. If you don't know, don't worry, we're going to find these phrasal verbs as we go through the articles today. So let's start. Trump says Greenland's defense is two dog sleds as he pushes for U.S. acquisition of territory. That's a very insensitive and rude comment by the president of my country because he's saying Greenland's military defense is two dog sleds. Well, what are dog sleds? Here are the dogs, and this person is riding the sled. The dogs are pulling the sled. The dogs are pulling the person. And this activity is called dog sledding. Again, this is the sled, and these are the dogs. It's a very popular activity, I'm sure, in northern countries, but again, very insensitive and rude comments. Let's continue. President Donald Trump said the U.S. must acquire Greenland, not lease it, arguing the Arctic territory lacks defenses and warning that Russia or China would move in if Washington does not act, a move he said is critical to U.S. and NATO security. This organization is NATO. The pronunciation is NATO. A, like the letter A from our alphabet. It's a long A sound, NATO. Remember, in American English, we don't like a hard T sound in the middle of our words because when we're speaking, that T sound stops us. We can't flow naturally when we pronounce that T in the middle of the word. So we changed that T sound to a D sound. NATO, NATO. That helps us speak faster, and it might help you sound more natural when you're speaking English. The verb to acquire something means to obtain something, and the noun form would be an acquisition. So, for example, the US wants to acquire Greenland from Denmark. We acquire something from someone. Greenland would be an acquisition of the United States. Donald Trump said he doesn't want to lease Greenland from Denmark. To lease means to pay someone for something, or in other words, to rent. So Donald Trump doesn't want to pay Denmark for Greenland. He doesn't want to rent Greenland from Denmark. It seems he wants to take Greenland with military force, which, for the record, I don't support. So Donald Trump argued that Russia or China would move in to Greenland. Here's another phrasal verb, to move in to a place. Do you know the opposite of to move in? It's to move out of a place. And this is very common when we're moving from one apartment to another apartment, or moving to a new house, moving to a new place to live. We move in, in to a place, and we move out of a place. We move in when we're going to live somewhere, and we move out when we're leaving a place. So he argued that Russia or China would move in to Greenland and possibly take Greenland for themselves. Let's continue. While speaking with reporters on Air Force One on Sunday night, Trump was asked about Greenland and whether the U.S. had made an offer to acquire the territory from Denmark. A common collocation in English is make an offer. I often see mistakes with the words make and do, so just remember we make an offer to someone. So the United States made an offer to Denmark. Or maybe the United States hasn't made an offer to Denmark. I haven't done that. Greenland should make the deal because Greenland does not want to see Russia or China take over, he said. Basically, their defense is two dog sleds. You know that? You know what their defense is? Two dog sleds. Again, very rude. But we found the answer to our first sentence. And it's he doesn't want to see Russia or China take over. In our sentence, Greenlanders don't want the US, Russia, or China to take over their country. If you knew that, congratulations. To take over is a verb which means to conquer. Conquer is the pronunciation. Conquer, to conquer. Now, why over? Well, to take something is with force. We take it. We take it. But over, if you watched my other videos, is related to the word cover. And if you see my notes here, you can see that the word over is inside the word cover. So, for example, my hand here is Greenland, and the United States military wants to take it, but not just take it with force, take it completely. In our minds, we imagine covering a place when we conquer it. So take it over, take it completely. I hope that's an easy way to remember that phrasal verb and other phrasal verbs with over. In the meantime, you have Russian destroyers and submarines, and China destroyers and submarines all over the place, Trump continued. We're not going to let that happen. And if it affects NATO, then it affects NATO. But, they need us more than we need them. I will tell you that right now. First, Trump says you have Russian destroyers and submarines, which just means they exist. And then he says China destroyers. But I think we know that the adjective for China is Chinese. So Trump should have said Chinese destroyers. But Trump is very charismatic. He speaks with poor grammar and poor English, but he speaks his mind all the time. So he makes mistakes. And then he says these destroyers and submarines are all over the place. All over the place means in every location. And he said, in the meantime, while this is happening, you have, or they exist, Russian destroyers and submarines and Chinese destroyers and submarines all over the place, in every location, spread out, maybe around the world, maybe in the ocean. And he said, we're not going to let that happen. And if it affects NATO, the verb is to affect something with an A. But the noun is an effect. This is a little strange in English. I'm not sure why this exists, but the noun form is with an E and the verb form is with an A. So try to remember that. And then Trump says, they need us more than we need them. I will tell you that right now. I will tell you that right now is just a common expression when we want to emphasize something and seem a little confident. Remember, I give private lessons on my website almost every day, and I have a lot of students, and I've had a lot of them for a very long time. But most importantly, they improve their English. So if you go to my website, you can read about me, you can read about my experience, how I traveled a lot. You can also read my certifications, how I have a bachelor's degree and a CELTA certification to teach English, 10 years of experience, and if you want, you can schedule a lesson right here. I give lessons, private lessons, on Microsoft Teams almost every day. You can see my schedule. So let's continue to the next article. Exclusive. Trump administration mulls payments to sway Greenlanders to join US. To mull is a verb that is not very common. I almost never use this verb. It's mainly for news or something like that. I think it's a very ugly word. It has a very ugly sound, mull. I just don't like it. But it means to consider, to think about something for a long time. So the Trump administration is considering payments to Denmark. Why? To sway them. To sway. To sway is a verb which is related to the wind. Imagine you have a tree with leaves. Well, when the wind blows, the leaves will sway and they will move in the wind. And with sway, we think about swaying from one side to another side. This also happens when you dance, for example. So with the wind or when you dance, you sway one side to another. And often when we have sides in English, we think of options. And when we have options, we have to make a decision. So when you have the verb sway, it's often about decisions or persuasion. So, in a way, the verb sway means to persuade, which means to convince someone with some kind of reasoning or an argument or something, tell them why it's a good idea. So, Trump wants to possibly give payments to convince Greenlanders to join the US. He wants to pay these people to convince them so they can make a decision, of course. A crazy story. How much does he want to pay them? US officials have discussed sending lump sum payments to Greenlanders as part of a bid to convince them to secede from Denmark and potentially join the United States, according to 4 sources familiar with the matter. While the exact dollar figure and logistics of any payment are unclear, US officials, including White House aides, have discussed figures ranging from $10,000 to $100,000 per person, said 2 of the sources, who requested anonymity to discuss internal deliberations. There's a lot here, but lump sum payments. If there is a lump sum payment, it's the payment all at once. So, of course, we're talking about a lot of money here, $10,000 to $100,000 per person. A crazy idea, in my opinion, as an American, as a lump sum payment. So, all at once, all of the money at once. And we won't talk much more about the vocabulary in this section, but let's just talk about numbers for a second. This number here on screen is 10,000, but how do we identify quickly that it's 10,000 and not 100 or something like that? Well, 2 zeros is 100. When you see 2 zeros, it's 100. 3 zeros is 1,000. But an easier way to identify that we're talking about 1,000 is when you have a comma. This symbol is a comma here. And when there's only one comma in the number, it's 1,000. So this number here, first we have 2 zeros. That's 100. And then we have a comma. So immediately my mind can identify it's 1,000. So very quickly, that's 100,000. If we have this number here, we can see that there are two zeros again, 500,000. That comma immediately, 1,000. What's this number? 25,000. Very quick. What's this number? 12,000. And one more, just random numbers. What's this number? 99,000. So 1 comma, 1,000. Very easy. Just remember. Let's move to the next article. Completely bonkers. Trump's Greenland mining dreams collide with reality. Now, my student from France, we often read the New York Times together. He's very advanced. And he mentioned the other day that he didn't know what bonkers meant. And I had to explain it to him, excuse me. And bonkers is a very easy word. It just means crazy. So completely crazy, like this situation. Trump's Greenland mining dreams collide with reality. Recently in the news, Trump was talking about mining in Greenland. And a person who mines, that means find resources in the ground, right? We mine for resources, valuable resources. A person who mines is a miner. So again, we have to mine, and a person who mines is a miner, just like a person who dances is a dancer, or a person who teaches is a teacher. So miner. I'm telling you this because Trump said something very funny. Trump, while talking about mining in Greenland, said, "I love miners." Now, there's a small problem with this because actually, it's a big problem. We also have the word miners. Miners. Same pronunciation, but with an O instead of an E. And minors with an O is a person or a child who is underage, who is not of legal age, who is not legally an adult. So Trump, with his Epstein situation, said, "I love minors." I guess he was talking about mining, but it was very funny. I love minors. It's unfortunate for him. So let's continue with the article. Greenland's untapped mineral wealth has helped land the island at the top of President Donald Trump's empire-building wish list. When we talk about the word untapped, it means, I'll say, unexplored. Unexplored. We have a phrasal verb, to tap into something. When we say to tap into something, it means to take advantage of something, like a situation. Take advantage of a situation. The verb tap is like this. I'm tapping, maybe tapping my finger. I'm tapping my finger on the desk or something like that. And when we're tapping into something, we're kind of exploring that area. We're taking advantage of that thing. We're getting those materials in this situation. So Trump wants to tap into the resources in Greenland. And here they're arguing that Greenland has untapped mineral wealth, which means no one has explored it yet. It's unexplored. So tap into something and untapped wealth. And it says that this has helped land the island at the top of President Donald Trump's empire building wish list. To land is connected to airplanes. So an airplane takes off, and then when it arrives at its destination airport, the airplane lands. So we can imagine that Greenland has landed like an airplane at the top of Trump's wish list, his empire building wish list. So that's land at the top. Trump officials view Greenland's underground riches as a way to loosen China's stranglehold over the rare earth metals that are critical for everything from fighter jets and lasers to electric vehicles and MRI scanners. To strangle is in the word stranglehold, the verb to strangle. And to strangle means to choke someone violently. So it's a very aggressive verb. A stranglehold is when you have a very tight hold over something. So to strangle someone and a stranglehold, it's when you hold something very, very tightly. So China has a stranglehold over or on these rare earth metals. And Trump officials view Greenland's underground riches as a way to loosen this tight stranglehold that China has. So he wants to loosen uh, this hold. We have the adjective loose, and the verb would be to loosen. This is a pattern that we see in a lot of different verbs in English. So we had the word tight, that's an adjective, a tight hold. So we can say tight, pronunciation tight, and we have the verb to tighten. We also see this in many other verbs, like the adjective wide. When you have a wide street, like streets in the United States, compared to streets in Europe, which are narrow, for example. So wide streets and narrow streets. Maybe you want to make that narrow street wider, so you want to widen the street. We also have the adjective short, and we can make the verb to shorten. And we have the adjective soft, for example, and we can say to soften. Soften without the T. No T sound in soften. Soften. Pronunciation, soften. I'll write it like that. There are many other verbs with this pattern, so I recommend going to study those. Let's continue just a little more with this article. We need Greenland. It's so strategic right now, Trump told reporters aboard Air Force One earlier this month. We're going to do something on Greenland, whether they like it or not. If we don't do it the easy way, we'll do it the hard way, Trump said Friday at a press conference with oil executives. Trump said, we're going to do something on Greenland, but normally we do something about something. So to do something about something means to basically fix the situation. As English learners, I really recommend you memorize the phrase do something about something, not do something on something. It's just another way of speaking that's not very common. So do something about something. Whether they like it or not. The word whether in this situation means if. And it's very interesting that whether has the same pronunciation as weather, like if it's raining or snowing or something like that. Weather and weather. So whether they like it or not. And that's a very common expression. Whether someone likes it or not. Whether something happens or not. We often combine or not after we use some words with whether. So whether something happens or not. And Trump said, If we don't do it the easy way, we'll do it the hard way, which means, of course, possible military action. We have another expression, by any means necessary, which means any method necessary. So, by any means necessary is a very interesting expression in English, very common in situations like these. It means by any method necessary. Okay, let's go to the next article. Europe neglected Greenland's mineral wealth. It may regret it. First, we have this verb, to neglect. And we have a very similar verb, to ignore. So, Europe ignored Greenland's mineral wealth. But what's the difference between neglect and ignore? It's a very small difference. To neglect means when you don't care about something. So you're neglecting it. Maybe you don't realize it. Maybe you don't understand that it's there and you kind of forget about it. So in this case, Europe kind of forgot about Greenland's mineral wealth. It didn't take responsibility. But to ignore is often intentional. So let's think for just a moment. If two people are in a conversation and one person is talking to the other one, and person number two is not paying attention, do you think that this person would say, "Hey, stop neglecting me," or "Hey, stop ignoring me"? Well, it's intentional, so they would probably say, "Hey, stop ignoring me. I know you can hear me, but you're choosing to not pay attention." Compared to neglecting a child on the playground. You're not really paying attention because you're not taking responsibility for that child. Those are two very common examples with ignore and neglect. And it says that Europe may regret it. Remember, may means maybe. But let's talk about the word regret. The word regret means you feel bad, feel bad about something you did in the past. And regret is really interesting because we use a gerund sometimes after regret. So, regret doing something. Regret neglecting Greenland or Greenland's mineral wealth. And we often see verb plus gerund. I recommend studying this. Remember, I give private lessons on Microsoft Teams. One of the things I focus on is the difference between to and ing. But two other verbs which are similar to regret in this situation are remember and forget. So we often learn I have to remember to do something. But if we say remember doing something, we're talking about the past. So for example, I remember teaching in my first classroom in Costa Rica 10 years ago. That's something in the past. Europe may regret neglecting Greenland, something in the past. And similarly to remember, we can also forget doing something. So those are three verbs that are acceptable with ing, a gerund. As Trump threatens to take Greenland by force, Europe's failure to mind the icebound Danish territory looks increasingly like a mistake. The word icebound isn't very common, but it's very appropriate for this situation, and it just means surrounded by ice. Let's continue with the article. On Greenland's southern tip, surrounded by snowy peaks and deep fjords, lies this place, a mining project that shows the giant, barren island is more than just a coveted military base. Barren is a word which is often used to describe big places or land, and it just means empty. And coveted is a word that just means desired. So if we reread this, it's a mining project that shows the giant empty island is more than just a desired military base, desired by the US military or desired by the US, for example. Beneath the icy ground sits a major deposit of this element and this element, rare earth elements used to make magnets that are essential to build wind turbines, electric vehicles, and high tech military equipment. Beneath is a word which just means under. So, under the icy ground sits or is, talking about location, a major deposit of these rare earth elements. Excuse me. So beneath the icy ground is a major deposit of these elements. If developed, Greenland, a semi-autonomous part of Denmark, would become the first European territory to produce these key strategic materials. Energy Transition Minerals, an Australia based China backed mining company, is ready to break ground. Here we can see that it's China backed, and back often means support. Think about it. If you fall back, you're going to want someone in the back of you near your back so they can catch you, so they can support you. So, in a lot of contexts, don't forget that back means support. So it's China backed, it's backed by China, or it's supported by China. And it says it's ready to break ground. Ready to break ground means to create some innovation. So to be innovating. We also have the word groundbreaking, which is innovative. So those are synonyms, the same idea. Let's move to the next article. Here we'll just read the headline. Trump's Iceland ambassador nominee jokes country will become a US state. So now we're talking about Iceland, not Greenland. Again, something I really don't support and I don't like as an American. But here we have an interesting word, nominee. This comes from the verb to nominate. So, this is the nominee for the Iceland ambassador. So, this is the person that Trump will nominate or has already nominated. But let's look at this from an English perspective. We have the word nominee, which is a person who receives a nomination. We also have the word interviewee, who is a person who receives an interview by an interviewer. Let's continue. We also have the word trainee, who is a person who receives training at a job. This is very specific, at a job. So when people train for the job the first week or something like that, they are a trainee, usually someone very young. We also have employee, and this is someone who receives employment from an employer, someone who is employed. They are an employee. And last, we have refugee, which is similar, but it's a person who seeks or looks for refuge in a place, in a new place or something like that, when they want to escape from their situation. So very important to see English patterns. and how we can use the language in similar situations. Let's go to the next article. Denmark and Greenland failed to win the Trump team over. Now, here we have an answer to one of our sentences from the beginning. After the meetings, Greenland and Denmark failed to win the Trump team over. Excuse me, before I also missed this one. I'm sorry we didn't read this one, but Trump wants to turn Greenland into a state. So turn something into a state means change the status of something. Turn often means become. So Trump wants to change Greenland, turn them into a state. And here, let's say after the meetings, Greenland and Denmark failed to win the Trump team over. Now, over, if you watched some of my last lessons, over means the shape of an arc, generally. So how can we connect this to the verb win? Well, if you persuade someone in an argument, you can win them to your side. So they're on one side and maybe they're opposed, but you persuade them and you win them over to your side. So win someone over means to convince someone, to win someone over. And Denmark and Greenland failed to win the Trump team over. They failed to convince the Trump administration. The U.S. allies hoped meeting senior Trump officials would diffuse tensions and tough talk on Greenland. It didn't. Diffuse tensions just means reduce tensions. And tough talk is something very common in negotiations. It just means an aggressive way of speaking. We don't really say aggressive talk, but we say tough talk. Again, an aggressive way of negotiating or having a conversation or arguing. Denmark and Greenland still have a fundamental disagreement with the US over President Donald Trump's desire to control the Arctic territory, Denmark's foreign minister said Wednesday. Lars Rasmussen and his Greenland counterpart, Vivian, finally had their chance to try to turn down the temperature at the White House after more than a year of aggressive internet trolling, statements, and demands from the US. Their conversation did little to dissuade Trump and his team from their hold on Greenland. We didn't manage to change the American position, Rasmussen told reporters after the meeting. It's clear that the president has this wish of conquering over Greenland. We made it very, very clear that this is not in the interest of the kingdom. Now, first, let's talk about the phrasal verb. Turn down the temperature. We can turn down the temperature or we can turn up the temperature. And that's the logic of this phrasal verb. We're turning or changing the temperature. When we turn it up, it gets hotter. When we turn it down, it gets colder. Or in this situation, it becomes less intense. And that's the answer to another one of our exercises. The European leaders had a chance to try to turn down the temperature during the meeting because the meetings were very aggressive. There was a lot of tough talk during these negotiations. So, of course, they wanted to turn down the temperature. And their conversation did little to dissuade Trump and his team from their hold on Greenland. Well, dissuade looks a lot like the word persuade. And remember, persuade is to convince someone so you can win them over. and, prove your argument to them. But dissuade looks kind of negative. So we can define dissuade as prevent, the opposite of persuade. The final part of this article that we're going to talk about is manage to do something. We didn't manage to change the American position. To manage to do something means to be able to do something. It's very similar, but if you use manage instead of be able to, there's a little implication of difficulty. So we didn't manage to do it. It was too difficult. Generally the same as be able to. Let's go to our next article, and we just have a little left. Denmark and allies boost Greenland military footprint as Trump ramps up pressure. And we have the answer to our final exercise from the beginning. Trump is ramping up the pressure on Greenland. Let's talk about ramp up. If you've been following the news, you've seen that Trump is intensifying a lot of his positions on different things around the world. Everything is becoming much more intense. And that's exactly what ramp up means, to make something more intense. So Trump is making the pressure more intense on Denmark. He's ramping up the pressure. The deployment comes as US President Donald Trump intensifies talk of taking over the Arctic island. That's all we're going to do with this article, and let's go to the final one. And in this one, we have a very interesting phrasal verb. Carney to Trump from Canada. Back off on Greenland. Back off. Canadian PM urged NATO allies, including the US, to respect their commitments. This seems a little aggressive and maybe defensive. And that's exactly what back off means. If we look at the first part, back, go back, don't come into my space, back. But why the word off? Well, off implies separation or a loss of contact. So when we aggressively want to be defensive, we say, back off. Don't come near me. Separate yourself from me. This is aggressive. Back off. And with that, I hope you learned a lot of phrasal verbs, a lot of new vocabulary, and I hope English is a little easier. Thanks for watching the lesson. I hope to see you on Microsoft Teams, and I'll see you in the next lesson.